Thank you for tuning in to Dyslexia Solutions, our YouTube today. I bring peace to parents by helping their dyslexic children read so we can build their self-esteem, unlock their genius minds, and help them realize their full potentials. I've been an educator for 21 years and a classroom teacher for 10. I'm Dr. Marianne Cintron. I raise awareness. So the purpose of this YouTube is threefold. One is to empower you with knowledge so that you can raise your awareness and know what's going on in education. Number two is to let you know you're not alone in your challenges with dyslexia, whether it's yourself or your children. And number three, we want to gain super fans, people who are passionate with us to help this population. 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic, and 35% of the entrepreneurs in the United States are also dyslexic. But what most people don't know is 35% of the high school dropouts are dyslexic. So 1 in 5 kids has dyslexia, and we really need to unlock their genius. So today I have a very special guest. Her name is Melissa Sommers. She is the CEO of Harmonic Changes. And I met Melissa through one of my board members who's a music therapist. Her name is Laura Fonseca. So I'm excited to have Melissa here because as a musical person, she's going to talk about the neurological science of how music helps with learning. And I want to welcome you on board, Melissa. Come to the stage.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So would you give a little introduction about who you are to our audience?
Absolutely. So you pronounced my name correctly. It's interesting re-saying my name after somebody just did. But yes, my name is Melissa Sommers. I'm a board certified music therapist. And as Marianne mentioned, the owner of a company called Harmonic Changes Therapy Services. And I really found my passion for music therapy at a really young age. Through a personal connection, my youngest sister was born with a brain tumor, which led to a lot of complications with every sensory system you can imagine. And one of the only things that consistently connected with her was me playing live piano music with her. So that really sent me into her special ed classes as, you know, the big sister helper, but I got to see firsthand all the different supports and resources and tools that are available in the school system and in the classrooms that can really help support education in unique ways. So that really led me down the path of how can I help music and help kids like my sister? And one thing led to another, and the universe sent me to the only state school that offered music therapy in Wisconsin, where I grew up. And I haven't looked back since.
I think it was pretty interesting that I asked you, so what instruments do you play? And you responded, what instruments do I not play? Yeah. And I find that with my friends who are very musical, that it just seems to transport to all the different instruments. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, that's one of my favorite responses when I get that question is, well, I do not play the didgeridoo, which is an instrument native to Australia. But with all of our education and knowing how unique music is processed in the brain, it's the only thing that has the ability to activate almost every nook and cranny of our brains, not at once, because we'd have a seizure. We don't want that. But because each instrument is processed slightly differently, everything we do as music therapists uses music. So we want to make sure our tool belt is as full and as diverse as it can be. So, I mean, I have guitar, ukulele, harp, and keyboard over here. Hand percussion instrument is right here. I have an auto harp. And in my garage, I have even more because of all of the ways that rhythm organizes our brain. It helps us with that feed forward loop. A lot of what we learn as kids is filling in the blanks. And it's because the rhythm is organizing, oh, I have to respond. And knowing that and tapping into using maybe some more percussive instruments or, you know, with the guitar is my go-to because it's so easy and quick to play. And It's really fun. I mean, what rock band doesn't have a guitar?
Right.
So
Well, you're speaking to my heart because as a nonprofit, we write grants. And
mhm,
one of the things we address is when music is played, it does allow the children to move forward because their brain does want to fill in the blanks.
yeah,
So it's like we read the same research article with that.
probably.
And it's very interesting because I don't see people using music with their reading programs. And I'm in a practicum for Orton Gillingham so that I could, that's like the gold standard of teaching reading. But I cannot use music with my practicum student because that would skew the data.
Mm,
So I have other students that I use my reading program with, and I use music.
yeah.
And I love it because they're making 1 to 3 year gains in only 6 weeks in reading vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Do you want to tell the audience about the students you work with from the range of dyslexic to autistic?
Yeah, so when I started Harmonic Changes, we were previously Melly Music and blah. There's a whole story behind it, but
Until you
um,
grew,
yeah. Uh,
expanded.
but I really wanted to focus on a company that serviced all ages. So we really tap into prenatal music therapy all the way to end of life and all the stages and needs in between that and all the various life stages and phases. So yeah, so we routinely support kids with autism, dyslexia, sensory processing, auditory processing, into, just some global delays, developmental delays, mental health support, end of life, memory, recall, and music wellness. We also do music lessons. So, kind of the full spectrum of as music therapists, music is so unique and connects to everybody so differently. So we really specialize in knowing that and supporting who we're working with.
So do you well, how do you find out your students' progress? Is it evidenced in what's going on in the classroom, or are you seeing evidence of that from day to day as you work with the students?
Both. So we really look at each of our clients as a whole. So what we see in session is only a part of who they are. So we want to know their support network and what they're seeing, because what we really see is, and what we hope for, is the transfer out of session. We want what we're doing to really influence their learning at school, their relationships at home, their regulation, meaning their ability to be in control of their emotions, and all of those things that we're working in session. We want that to help outside of session and to kind of flow. So we do start with an assessment where we put together our goals, and then we track every session, and then every few months we write a progress report, and we really try to tap into all those individuals and important people in that support network too.
So how many times a week would a student be with you?
Our average is 1 to 2 sessions a week. Um, and it just really depends on the needs and how invested the family is. And, the kids these days too are so busy. So what's their schedule look like, and what would be the best, most appropriate?
So are your clients private pay families, or do you have schools reaching out to you as well?
So we are primarily private pay, and we've had a few school districts that we've partnered with, and we're on the cusp of getting vendored and vetted through insurance to accept insurance funding.
Well, now I know insurance covers auditory processing. Is that a way you can, because a lot of dyslexic people have auditory
Yeah,
processing issues,
yeah.
but the insurance isn't covering it for reading remediation. Oops, I don't know why it's recording that. Sorry. Ah! But the insurance doesn't cover the intervention for reading remediation. But if parents out there can pursue with their insurance that their child has auditory processing delays, that would
Yeah.
be very helpful.
We are diving in blindly into this insurance game, and we're going to learn a lot as we go. But absolutely, from what I've gathered so far, is most codes are not contingent upon the provider. it's contingent upon what service is being provided. So we're going to learn as we go, but we're very open to learning as well.
And we want to encourage families, if you can afford private pay, let's get started to help your child now. Let's don't wait. And if you want to be pursuing with the paperwork, to have the insurance cover it or your school to cover it, great. But let's get started now. Somebody told me that they were told by a therapist that children should learn the alphabet, not by learning the letter names, but by learning the letter sounds. And you do a little bit of that in your therapy. You want to demonstrate for our audience what that looks like?
Absolutely. So it's a very common technique we use in music therapy. And I actually coach all parents in session on how they can use this outside. And it's like the fun name is piggyback lyrics. And we all do this. So it's the idea of you keep the melody and the rhythm of a familiar song, but you change what you're singing to reflect what you're working on. So if I'm working with a kiddo and we're working on the sound like ba, 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 we might take a song that I know they enjoy, like the Itsy Bitsy Spider, and just ba, 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 and give them the opportunity to say ba.
Huh, wow, okay.
The other way that we do it is for kids that can seem a little young. So for some older kids, having more of that emotional connection, because we also know a lot of emotion is involved in learning things, and when you're not learning as quickly as you want to, or so a go-to song that I also like is If You're Happy and You Know It, and identifying different sounds that you can use with different emotions, where it's also giving tools on how to express those emotions appropriately, is another great song and resource that I like to use as well. So, you froze.
Oh, no.
You still there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, no.
We've been having some internet connections with the weather here.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe I could edit that part out. Yeah, it's just because of the weather.
Okay.
It's in California, and we finally have some dampness in the air, and the internet goes, ah. Well, when I used to substitute in kindergarten,
I don't know what to do.
We always had we always had music to teach the kids to move and wiggle with music.
Yeah.
And, when I was teaching in the middle school, we would have the kids enter with a certain type of a music. And then when the class was over, they could exit with music, because you just want their spirits uplifted coming in and leaving.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
What other brilliant music tips do you have to share with our audience? I'm just so excited.
Well, so I want to comment really quickly on that, and a little, because my master's is in music with all of the focus on neurologic music therapy. So this is where I geek out.
Okay.
So basically what research shows us is when our brains hear two steady beats, it automatically anticipates the third and activates our motor cortex, which is why rhythm is so whole body, and we intrinsically respond to rhythm without even realizing it. It organizes movement. It helps with sequencing information, which is great when you're learning to read and you're learning some more coordination, movement, motor stuff. But also we know how closely tied it is to emotion. So it's a great way to feel understood and validated and heard through certain song choices. So I love when music is integrated into all of that, because it's just another fun way of presenting the information in a non-threatening way. I know when I've helped kiddos with, younger kids with toileting, or a little older with tying their shoes, we'll specifically write songs sequencing the steps, and you can sing the same tying your shoe song 20 times in a row, and it's going to come across and be interpreted very differently than if you're saying it. And it's because of all those rhythm and melody and the way that our brain is processing it differently. So it's such a powerful tool.
Well, and let me
go
ahead.
I almost forgot this other part that I wanted to share too, is there's a really phenomenal collection of books by the illustrator Iza Trapani, Izatrapani. And that piggyback technique that I was referencing a minute ago, what these books do is they take familiar child nursery rhymes, Itsy Bitsy Spider, Shoe Fly, The Bear Went Over the Mountain, and they created an entire book. So it's like 20 pages of the same melody, and every page is a new part of the story. So it's a really great way to help promote reading new words, sustaining through books longer, because the whole song is organized through that familiar melody. And because of how our brain works and wanting to fill in the blanks and have those pauses have an answer, it's a really great way to help promote some resiliency and some persistence in pushing through with reading books that, is commonly a big challenge.
Well, that's a good resource. I was going to say how we use music in my reading program is we have an app. Right now it's called Dunking Dyslexia, but we're changing it to be CDS for Cintron Dyslexia Solutions. And we have a donut, we're getting rid of the donut, and we have a really nice new logo. But we play classical music in the left ear, which transfers to the right side of the brain and gives it a job it likes to do so that it doesn't take over the reading. And then we have the spelling exercises in the right ear, which cross to the left side of the brain, strengthening the left angular gyrus like Pilates of the brain. And that's what it is. We had an 8th grade student who was being raised by her grandfather because her mom was in prison. And her grandfather was afraid she was following her mom's footsteps. And he said they tried all the after-school programs and nothing was working with her. And he wanted to come to us. We had a 6-week program. He wanted to come to us because of the music, because his daughter liked music. And sure enough, after 6 weeks, I mean, he was in tears seeing the progress she made, calling it a miracle, asking me if I was a doctor. I mean, it was like the missing link. And when I wrote my book, A Message of Hope, I talk about music is the missing link. Why don't we, I think there's some research being done on it now, but it's not out yet. And here I've been using music for 15 years, teaching reading.
Yeah.
So,
well, and as music therapists, we're constantly in this battle of, because music is so quickly deemed as recreation or extracurricular, that there's a lot of confusion about, oh no, we're evidence-based, we're research-based. Yes. We have this whole growing database of how music is affecting our brain, how music is supporting emotions and relationships and wellness and all of these great things. And if you look, history shows us in, BC era, music was used for healing powers and all throughout history. So I think it's one of those things that sometimes you have to sit down and lay it all out for somebody sometimes. And then it's like, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense. But people don't think about it that way.
And the research is showing that there's 4 areas where dyslexic people really thrive. And the arts is one of them. The other is engineering, architecture, and entrepreneurism. But to be in the arts, where some of them are so musically creative and artistic with art and paint, but musically creative. So even more so, I would think parents would want to get their children involved with music. We always had our kids involved with music in elementary school because we learned that it helped their other academics.
Absolutely.
And even though that wasn't the path either of my kids continued in, we always gave them that opportunity because you never know. They might get the gene of my mom who played guitar great. I never got that gene, and my kids didn't get that gene. But you never know if a child will get one of those genes if a relative is very musical.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I always really focus on parents and say, it doesn't matter if you can sing in tune. It doesn't matter if you are intrinsically rhythmic or not. It's about how our brain is processing the music. That's important, and how the information is being provided differently through music. So sing off key, sing arrhythmically. It's more how it's processing in our brains more than the performance side of it.
About 18 years ago, I went to an international dyslexia conference back east, and Patricia Kuhl was the keynote speaker. And there was a neurologist there who introduced her. And the neurologist had literally spoke to me and said, if you're using music with this reading program, continue, because music has more benefits to the brain than we can ever imagine. Because I was afraid, oh no, am I changing the kid's brain if I'm using music so young? And this is, of course, 18 years ago, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, music is going to help more than anything. You want to mention a little bit about the elderly? That's a real concern for us all right now, because so many of us have parents that are in elderly care, and how music is helping them.
Absolutely. So what we're doing right now, and what we've been really focusing on during this whole pandemic, is really connecting to our senior community and our elders through music, and really kind of trying to think outside the box and how can we do remote sessions and virtual sessions. And now, fortunately, all of our team has had access to the vaccine, so we're slowly rolling out in-person sessions again. And a lot of the facilities that we were partnered with before the pandemic have come around now to allowing virtual sessions in like the common rooms, so we can still remote in. But we also, on our website, we've created a bunch of videos with on-screen lyrics for sing-alongs, and just more wellness opportunities to connect through music virtually and remotely. But also with our older population, what we focus on a lot is memory and reminiscence, and to kind of what you were just saying too, with the neurologist saying, no, incorporate music. I always like to explain that music is the ultimate GPS of our brain, where any sort of a diagnosis that we might have, if we think of that as a roadblock, or there's an object in the road, right? But when we incorporate music, it knows the detours. It can create bridges. It can create new pathways and connections, supporting all of learning new information, or being able to access information that maybe wasn't previously accessible because of a stroke or because of dementia or whatever diagnoses there may be. But music is I love saying it's the ultimate GPS, because it knows all the shortcuts.
And elderly love to listen to their old songs, right?
Yeah, it's a time capsule.
Yeah.
It brings you back so vividly. Sometimes I've had some of my friends, oh, I can taste the pistachios, or I can taste, because it was a song, that was bringing back such rich memories. So.
And if an elderly care center out there ever wanted to work with me with what I'm doing with my app, I always thought, because we have spelling words in the right ear, that the elderly would want to practice their spelling, and write sentences like they do crossword puzzles or other things. But it's been a real hard way to get that in. It just wasn't the right timing. But who knows? Maybe if someone's listening to this podcast in a year, they might be ready for that.
It's just so fascinating sometimes how things come full circle at times.
The other thing I wanted to share was I had a 7th grade student that I was teaching math to. We had a class of 15, and he would say, I'm adopted, I have ADHD, and I have dyslexia. And he said that the Ritalin calmed him down, but the music helped him learn. Mm-hmm. And the days when he forgot his phone and couldn't play his music, he had a bad day. And he had that written into his individual education plan at school. Yeah. And it went with him all through the rest of middle school and through high school.
I love that it was so supportive of his music.
And a lot of the administrators in the schools just aren't getting it. They just don't want the kids listening to their music, when it really does help them. If they can, I think, find a balance, if the kids take advantage of it. And like, if I saw the students rocking out, they lose their privilege. Right. Or if they were focused and attending to what I was teaching, they could listen to music in their left ear. Yeah. And one student said, oh, I like it better in my right. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. Listen and learn.
Yeah. And again, it's because of the unique way music is processed in our brain, and the unique way music is globally processed. Just hearing a song with melody and rhythm, both sides of your brain are awake and engaged, not to mention all the other things that are in a song.
Do you want to, we'll wrap this up, but I wanted to ask you, do you want to say anything to the value of classical music versus hip hop or any kind of rock or anything?
Yeah, so I always tell people we're not meant to like every song. Otherwise, there would be one artist and one album, and that would be it. And I think it really speaks to the uniqueness of who we are as individuals. Again, no two brains are alike.
That's right.
And we know each genre is processed slightly differently in the brain. So I think we really connect to certain styles of music based on who we are, but also knowing the differences of lyrical music versus non-lyrical music, and knowing that non-lyrical music supports with more reading and supports with more history, like social studies and history, and then lyrical music tends to support more with math and science because of the parts of the brain that are engaged. So I always, try to expand if somebody is really stuck in one genre. And a great way to do that is through bands like Postmodern Jukebox, or looking up for different versions of a song that you already like, but listening to it in a different style. So it's familiar, but you're just flirting with going outside of your comfort zone a little to help expand from one genre, or, a little bit.
When you play your instruments, do you feel like you're going into a new world? I mean, how does it relax you?
So a lot of what I do with my harp is I do some mindful breathing with it with a lot of my music wellness groups. And I find when I'm doing it, I get just as much out of it as anybody that's receiving it. But absolutely, in another part of my house, I have a baby grand piano because I grew up a classical pianist. So I love getting lost. Like if you've seen the movie Soul.
Soul, S-O-U-L.
Yeah, it's the new Pixar movie out.
Oh.
There's a brilliant explanation
Don't
of
judge me, I haven't.
No. There's a brilliant explanation of being in the zone.
Mm.
And it's that idea of like you kind of go into another space. And I find sometimes I do get there in that zone when I'm playing classical piano every now and again, which I love. So.
Well, because I have a little keyboard in my office and I have to put all the letters on the keys. And I'll tell you, just some of those sounds, I could just, I just feel like I love the space and I just love to play that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap this up, Melissa. I want to thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you.
What would be a final word to our audience, and then how can they reach you?
So a final word to the audience I would definitely encourage you to explore ways that you can use music, especially those challenging moments of, shaking it up a little bit with a song and a playful little dance, get your body engaged, and just kind of create new opportunities to connect with your body, with others through music. So that's kind of what I always like to throw that out there.
Okay. And if they need some ideas, can they reach out to you and get some ideas?
Yes. So check out our website, harmonicchanges.com. We have a bunch of resources on there. And then you can always reach out to us at info@harmonicchanges.com. And we offer a free 30-minute consults where we can answer questions you might have and see if music therapy might be a good fit, or adapted music lessons, or kind of figuring out if we can support what you're looking for. So.
Well, I envy you so much. I always wanted to be so musical, and I
you
love
still
this.
Can. You are.
And people who have these wonderful voices, you're just my envy, but it's the gift God's given you. So thank you very much, Melissa, for being here.
Thank you.
And audience, I want to thank you for tuning in today. Let me challenge you to please like this episode and share it. And if what we have shared has blessed you, would you please go to our website and consider making a donation? That would really help us keep getting these messages forward. So I'm going to say goodbye to you. Thank you all. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye now.